There is an estimated 2.5 million Roma, also known as the pejorative Gypsies, living in Europe, but this very noticeable minority in many Eastern European countries has been forced to wage a surprising fight against school segregation. Roma school children are being separated from their white peers, but Roma parents know from U.S. history that separate rarely means equal. And so they enlisted the guidance of American civil rights attorneys to aid in the fight. Our guests today are veteran civil rights attorneys Jack Greenberg and Theodore Shaw. Greenberg was co-counsel with Thurgood Marshall in the groundbreaking U.S. Supreme Court case Brown versus the Board of Education, which desegregated public schools in America. And Theodore Shaw worked for more than 20 years with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. Both men are law professors at Columbia University, and I just can't thank you guys enough for being here with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Jack, let me begin with me. Can you tell me why you decided to to champion discrimination against the Romas?
Well, let me tell you a little bit about their background. They were slaves in Europe the same time African Americans were slaves in the U.S. And when Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation here, an Emancipation Proclamation was issued in Romania, freeing the slaves. So their emancipation came at the same time. But while there's been some progress here, very, very slow, there was almost nothing at all happening in Europe. And the Roma remained pretty close to slavery as they had been. When the Eastern European countries wanted to join the European Union said, well, okay, but you have to take a pledge, you put an end to segregation in your schools if you come in. So they pledged. They came in, and then they've done nothing.
And Theodore, again, to give some more historical context, I mean, it's almost incredible to believe that the type of bias and segregation that's happening right now in many Eastern European countries is taking place, particularly in school. Kind of paint the picture of how Romas are treated.
Well, most Americans would be shocked if Roma were on their radar screen and they understood the kind of discrimination that they face. They are largely invisible to many people, including many Europeans, and the discrimination they face is not only in public school education, but it's in all walks of life. You know, the police often interact with them in ways that are similar to the way police too often interact with African Americans here in the United States. There's housing discrimination, there's employment discrimination, there's discrimination in public accommodations, and many people feel very free to say vile and hateful things about Roma. It's like stepping back 70 or 80 years in the United States, if not more. You know, I was not aware of this issue, and it was Jack Greenberg who really introduced me to the issue of Roma rights many years ago.
And it really is incredible, as you were saying. That's exactly what I was thinking. It's like stepping back in time at least 50 years in our history of race relationships. But as it relates specifically to how the Roma children are treated in school, they are put in separate classrooms, they eat in a separate area, play in a separate area. How is that system able to be perpetuated? How is it even legal?
They're treated as being mentally impaired. They're put in classes for mentally deficient children.
It's just incredible. So where is the legal fight to tear down some of these injustices?
Well, when the Central European countries were admitted to the European Union, they came under the European Convention on Human Rights, which is pretty much what our 14th Amendment says about equal protection. So the law is the same. But of course, we had the law for a long, long time and nothing was done on them. And still nothing is being done in Europe. They won some important cases in the European Court of Human Rights, and just nothing's happened.
And does some of that fall? I was reading a little bit about just the culture of the Roma people, that perhaps there is not a centralized leadership, a galvanized population to advocate on their own behalf. I see you nodding your head.
Yes, well, Roma are very insular. That is to say, they're isolated. In many communities, they stay to themselves because they're distrustful of the larger community. But we don't have anything like what we had in the United States. In the United States, the civil rights movement rested in part or came out of the black church. There's nothing comparable among Roma. Yes, there's a Roma culture, but you don't have the activists. You don't have people who are working in organizations that are comparable to the organizations that were created to work on behalf of African Americans. And so we don't see anything in terms of a movement among Roma in Europe. And that doesn't mean there aren't Roma activists, but we don't see a movement. And that's not something that somebody else can give you. That's something that has to come organically from people.
But what can be done? I mean, of course, even in the civil rights movement, the civil rights leaders and champions knew that if they could go into churches, get the pastors on board, get the community leaders on board, that the community would come along. Is there any transfer of that knowledge to the Romas to help them organize?
Not as far as I know, and I've inquired about it.
Is that right?
That's right.
Tell me, what are Romas seeking? And are there demands being made by the Roma people?
Well, there are some Roma making demands, but none of it has really caught fire.
And here in the United States, when we talk about, these movements, they are traceable back to the end of slavery and even before slavery. There isn't any comparable thread that at least I've seen or I know about among Roma, although Roma have looked to the African-American experience. As we've been over to Europe on a number of occasions, they say, how did you do it? What did you do? And I, for one, believe deeply that we can tell them what we did, but they have to determine what they can use and what they can't use. It's not for us to say that we're giving them a playbook.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, indeed. Again, it's just an incredible situation that seems hard to imagine in 2013. Wish you well with your efforts, Jack Greenberg, Theodore Shaw. Thank you very much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.